ever rewatch something from your childhood and then realize it was slightly a lot more darker than you realize? This is one of those lesser known childhood cartoons from like the early 2000s, late 90s, where it's like you either know it or you don't, or you just thought it was a fever dream. And the plot of the show is pretty much what the title of the show is, Mummies Alive. These four mummies are the guardians of this boy, and in present day, his name is Presley Carnarvon. However, back in ancient Egypt, he was Prince Ramses. Rapses, my bad. However, we discover in his past life, Prince Rapses here, he was murdered and betrayed by somebody in his court, and these four mummies who were trying to save him were murdered along with them. So in present day, the prince's spirit gets reincarnated into this, and since the guardians swore to protect the prince of Egypt, they get resurrected. His killer from ancient Egypt is still alive though. And in this dark ass episode, he shows Presley how he died in ancient Egypt. The episode is called Sleepwalk Like an Egyptian. I'm just gonna get to the good parts of the episode. If y'all wanna watch the whole thing in its entirety, go watch it on YouTube. So in this series, remember, Presley is the reincarnated Prince Rapses, and these are his guardians that swore to protect him. So this is the villain of the series. His name is Scarab, and he's the one who killed Prince Rapses in his past life, also known as Presley Carnarvon in today's modern age. So Scarab's angry because right now there's a spell that's shielding the reincarnated Prince Rapses from Scarab's eyesight for a while. And Scarab's like, there has to be a way I can lure him into my grasp. And you know every villain needs a sassy sidekick, kind of like how Jafar had Iago. See, Heka here, she knows Scarab wants Prince Rapses, aka Presley Carnarvon, because once he kills Presley Carnarvon, who is Prince Rapses again, he'll be able to have immortality. It's kind of like Hocus Pocus. He wants immortality in youth. So that's his motivation. Keep that in mind. And Heka's like, damn, boss, you're living a living nightmare. And that's when inspiration hits. He's like, a living nightmare? That is perfect, Heka. He goes into this dark hypnotic trance, and he starts to summon a living nightmare. And a scorpion flies out of his mouth, but it's actually a nightmare. And Scarab says, I have captured a dream, Heka, a living nightmare. So pretty much, once this hits Prince Rapses, aka Presley Carnarvon, it's gonna trigger his past life memories where he's gonna go through the trauma of what he lived, pretty much his death in a past life. And Scarab's like, since the prince is blinded in this modern age from my sight for the moment, I'm gonna send my shadow after him because my shadow can walk in the darkness. And Scarab sends his shadow to do the things that he cannot do. So meanwhile, Presley and the mummies are out there protesting the destruction of the Museum of Ancient Egyptian History, because that's where the mummies are living, and that's where their sarcophagus, y'all know what I'm talking about, is, and that's how the mummies get their powers to re-alive themselves every day. And suddenly at the protest, the lights go out. And since the lights go out at the protest, Scarab's shadows can come out and play because, you know, shadows love to play in the darkness. They feed off of that shit. And Scarab's shadow sneaks out from behind the broken lights now, and he sends the nightmare to stab Presley. So you know what a scorpion, they'll sting you and stuff like that, but the sting is a memory from Scarab's dark magic. And you know, Presley, he ain't thinking nothing of it because he just learned he was the reincarnated prince of ancient Egypt. So he just think he got stung by a bee because he's out there protesting to keep the museum. Part 2 in the comments. Part 2 of how Prince Rapses was killed in his past life. So after Presley got stung by the scorpion, he starts to feel dizzy and woozy. So he's like, you know, I'm finna leave the protest and I'm finna go home for the night. And when he gets home, he's already fast asleep, as we see down below, and his mother's just, you know, tucking him in. However, that's when his visions into the past begin. So Presley wakes up in his ancient Egyptian chambers as Prince Rapses. But in present day, like I told you, he's in a daze because he's under the spell. So he's like a walking mummy, literally sleepwalking. And he's talking to his mom. But back in the past, he has a flash of himself talking to his mother, inquiring where their father is, King Amenhotep. And while Prince Rapses is inquiring about where his dad is, Scarab comes in, and this is Scarab in ancient Egypt. This is what he looked like before the dark magic corrupted him. And we find out he is the governor of Egypt. You know, that's like second in command to the pharaoh. And he tells them, like, his father is in Nubia and he shall be still a couple days away. But see, the prince has good intuition. So you know when you have that weird uncle, that weird friend with the odd energy, and you just don't fuck with them, but you don't want to start no beef, so you keep them around? That's what Scarab is to Prince Rapses. Prince Rapses don't really fuck with Scarab, but he knows he's high in his father, who is the pharaoh's court, so he can't do nothing about it. So after Scarab tells him the news that his father's in Nubia and he's still a couple days away and he won't be in town anytime soon, Prince Rapses is like, thank you, Scarab. And the queen is like, thank you, Scarab. You were dismissed now. Because nobody sees or picks up on the weird energy Scarab gives off but Rapses. But Rapses knows not to trust him. Always follow your intuitions, ladies and gentlemen. And then the queen is telling Prince Rapses, you have to go do your study. You have to go to school today. And if you want to be a good king one day, you have to learn your lessons. You have to be educated. Education is key. Education is elevation. Shout out to Conscious Lee. So in present day, Presley is getting on the school bus to head to school. But that parallels to his past because he's getting a ride to his classes by Nefer. And if y'all know, Nefertina, this is actually Nefertina, the female mummy in the group. However, back in ancient Egypt, she had to pretend to be a man because, you know, women weren't allowed to do anything that they were better than men at. And Prince Rapses knows that she's really a woman, but he's keeping her a secret because, you know, probably she would be put to death. And he's kind of manipulative. He's like, I'll keep your secret that you're a woman driving the royal chariot if you let me drive. And that nigga takes off in the desert. Part 3 coming later. Part 3 of how Prince Rapses was killed in ancient Egypt and reborn. So Prince Rapses is over here driving a chariot wildly because he's blackmailing Nefer because she's really a woman. And they arrive at guardian number 2, Wrath. He is the sorcerer, like he's the sorcerer supreme. He teaches the prince magic. And Wrath is looking at Nefer like, nigga, you done let the prince drive and he ain't even the right age? I don't know if they had a right age for driving chariots back in ancient Egypt, but everything was reckless back then. So the prince is doing his scriptures and he's learning spell casting. But remember, Presley in the present is seeing this stuff and he was like, these spells will help you one day. However, remember, since Presley is reliving his past life, the spells that he are saying, he's probably saying in the present day because he's in a sleepwalking like trance state. So as he's learning the spell that Wrath in the past is teaching him, he starts chanting it in present day class. So his poor teacher's pointer turns into a snake and start wrapping around his ass. Then we move on further in the day, and this is Armand. He's the third guardian. He's the one who teaches him combat. And Armand is like, he's like the head guard of Prince Rapses' father's, King Amenhotep's guardship. And the reason why we find out he has that gold arm because when he went into war for the king, his arm was chopped off. Ain't it crazy the shit we picked up throughout this series? And this is a kid show. But Prince Rapses was quick at learning. So as you see, he ended up putting Armand on his ass because Armand is a good teacher. So he whooped his ass real quick. And Armand's like, honey, you passing. While Armand is still in the vase from when Rapses threw him in there, Jakar, the fourth guardian and like the leader of the guardians, he's like, hey, do you want to go hunting? So hunting in ancient Egypt in this world is kind of like their gym class. So, and he tells Jakar, okay, let me go put on my hunting robes and I'll meet you. Now this is where shit starts to turn. Jakar goes to get his hunting materials, and as a little while goes by, you see the prince has finally changed into his hunting robe. And as he's running down the hall to go to Jakar's chambers to meet him, guess who pops out of the shadows? Scarab. And he's like, Scarab, what do you want? And Scarab stops Prince Rapses and tells him before he goes on his hunting trip, his father needs him because there's a conspiracy in a palace of them plotting against the royal family. And Prince Rapses cannot trust his other guardians. He must bring him to his father in hurry. But remember in the beginning, he said his father, King Amenhotep, was in Nubia. Part 4 in the comic. Part 4 of how Prince Rapses was killed. So as I said in the last part, Prince Rapses is running to catch up with Jakar because they're going hunting. And Scarab stops him, telling him he can't trust his guardians and there's a conspiracy in the palace. And remember, back then in ancient Egypt times, there was always somebody plotting on somebody. So you had to take things like this serious. And remember, this is before people knew Scarab's true intentions. So Prince Rapses is going to trust him because Scarab is his father's right-hand man. He's the governor of Egypt. So Scarab easily convinces him because Scarab's been around Prince Ramses his whole life. Whether he likes him or not, he's still a trusted member of his father's court. And poor Prince Ramses believes him, and they go off into the desert together to meet his father. I remember somebody tried to take me to go meet my father. Still looking for the nigga. Meanwhile, Jakal is in his chambers, and you see he got a hunting attire, and he's saying goodbye to his wife and son. And you know, they do their romantic thing and they kiss. However, the queen comes and says, "Hey, Jakal, has Prince Ramses left with you on the hunting voyage yet?" And they bow, of course, because that's the queen. And he's like, no, he hasn't even came to my chamber yet. So now we got a problem because the prince is missing now. Because remember, Scarab told the prince not to tell anybody where he has because there's a conspiracy in the palace. And to be honest, nigga, the only conspiracy was you, Scarab. But see, as we know, when we're dealing with villains, they ain't new to this, they true to this. So what do you expect? So Jakal's like, don't worry, your majesty. I'm going to round up the other guardians and we're going to go looking for the prince. So Jakal kisses his wife and son and tells them goodbye, not knowing this is going to be the last time he ever does see them. Meanwhile, we're in the desert and you see these motherfuckers is burning hubcaps or gold wheels back then, and they're going to a specific point in the desert. And Rapsy gets off and he was like, "You see at the highest point, you see that man standing there? That's your father. Go meet him. He has some information to tell you that I can't be present." And Scarab's like, "Trust me." And Prince Rapsy looks at the top of the mountain and he sees his father's silhouette. And Scarab walks with him to the base of the mountain and tells him, "Go ahead, Prince Rapsy, enjoy yourself. You know how busy the king is." And see, this is why I love a good villain, even if it's on a low-budget cartoon, because this shit was just so good. And Prince Rapsy runs up the mountain towards his father. But it wasn't to be his father. He yells for his father to turn around, and it's Scarab. And Prince is like, how's he in two places at once? And he turns around and Scarab is gone. And Prince knows he is in true danger for his life. And Scarab grabs the prince and makes his declaration, because you know every villain gotta reveal their plot when they're about to hit victory. And this is what Scarab says. Part 5 of how Scarab killed Prince Ramses. The moment Prince Ramses is in, it's like, you know when you know somebody ain't shit, but still when they show their true colors and you're right, you're kind of shocked like, bitch, I was right, but also like, bitch, I told you so. That's where he's at. And Scarab grabs him and he's like, "Where's my father? Why are you doing this?" So Scarab pretty much declares to Prince Ramses, "I am the most powerful man in Egypt. After your father, I will be the next pharaoh if King Amenhotep has no son." And then with this series, what they do is they never really show us, because of course it's a kid cartoon, him killing Prince Ramses. However, at the end of the episode where Prince Ramses in present day Presley Carnarvon breaks the spell of having visions of his past life. So the way we find out that Presley and all the mummies died in that battle is in present day, after the curse is broken of Presley having to relive his past life as Prince Ramses, he goes up and he asks Jakal, "Was that dream I had real? Is that really what became of me?" And Jakal shamefully says, "Yes, Presley, it was what happened to you back then." And Presley goes in deeper and he's like, "Did you guys find me in time?" And Jakal gives him the harsh reality of, "We found you, but it wasn't in time." And he even goes deeper and he tells them, "We couldn't save you or ourselves," which tells you like they all perished during the battle of trying to get Prince Ramses saved. And you know, and then Presley asks Jakal, because remember the one scene where he was with his son and his family, he asked him, "Whatever became of your family?" And he was like, "We don't know. That was the last time I ever seen them, was the day you went missing and we went into battle and we all died." Episode after that, we get a small flashback of what became of Scarab. He's being led to this soul tomb in the middle of a desert by the king's guards. And King Amenhotep declares his punishment on Scarab. And Amenhotep confirms too. He was like, "You took my son's life." Now his spirit like wanders the great beyond because he can't be at rest or go to the afterlife. And now his soul is waiting to be reborn. When Scarab cockily says, "You cannot harm me. I will still be young for 50 lifetimes when you've been in your tomb for 100 years. And the king says, "At least when I'll be in my tomb, I'll be dead." And the guards push Scarab into this lonely tomb in the middle of the desert, deep in the desert, and he is buried alive. Until the events of the pilot episode where it shows these nosy-ass white archaeologists digging him up and they release him back onto the world. And then you have the plot of the present day plot. But yeah, he was buried alive in ancient Egypt.